Immigration Consulting. My name is Sridhar Iyer and I'm a registered Canadian immigration consultant. In this video, I'm going to talk about the pathways to immigrate to Canada. This is applicable to people who are within Canada as well as people who are outside Canada. So let's get started. There are 9 pathways that I'm going to talk about in this video. One is the Express Entry itself, the Express Entry system that supports 3 immigration programs, which is the Federally Skilled Worker class, Trades, and Canadian Experience class, the Provincial Nomination programs, the Atlantic Immigration Pilot Program, the Rural and Northern Immigration Pilot Program, the Family Sponsorship, Provincial nominee programs for investors, self-employed programs, humanitarian and refugee options, and startup visa. So what is Express Entry? Express Entry is an online system that manages applications from skilled workers. It supports 3 immigration programs, Federally Skilled Worker, which is applicable to people within Canada and outside Canada. Generally, people from outside Canada use this route. The Canadian Experience class, generally for people within Canada, but if you're someone who has Canadian experience on the resume of 1 or more years, and even if you have moved to your home country after that, you could still be using the Canadian Experience class. The system decides, depending on all the information you give the system decides which one is more applicable to you. Third, the federally skilled trades, specific occupations, come under this. The specialized occupations may, like chefs, butchers, etc., come into this. We have separate video, so please have a look at the federally skilled trades video. The provincial nomination program, the 2 types. One is the express entry aligned provincial nomination, and then there's the non-express entry aligned. Generally, for an express entry aligned program, you got to have an active express entry profile. You have to express your interest through the profile, get a notification, and then apply for your provincial nominations. In some cases, though, if the province agrees to give you a nomination, you could, at that point, you could create your express entry profile, but the acceptance of nomination should happen online only when it comes to an express entry aligned provincial nominee program. The non-express entry aligned programs are the provincial nomination application happens first, and this is followed by, once you get the nomination, it is followed by an application to IRCC for permanent residence. The third is the Atlantic Immigration Pilot Program. Generally, so when people are not able to get enough points on the express entry system due to lack of an advanced degree or lack of language skills or multiple factors, they come to me and ask about the Atlantic Immigration Pilot Program. The major challenge you got to realize with AIPP is there is a requirement of a job offer from a designated company in one of the 4 provinces that comes under this program. The 4 provinces are Newfoundland and Labrador, or Prince Edward Island, Nova Scotia, or New Brunswick. If you don't have, if you're not a recent graduate from a publicly funded institution of these provinces, then you need a job offer from a designated company in these provinces, and only then an AIPP would work. Next is the Rural Northern program. It's a fairly new program, hardly been there for about 5-6 months now. Many of the rural areas have not even opened the doors for application, but there are a few of them who have, and the basic requirement is you have to be either a graduate from a publicly funded university from the recommending community. That could get you the RNIP, or you have at least 1 year experience in within the last 3 years from inside or outside Canada in that occupation that they're hiring, and the main duties must match with that of the NOC. Of whatever you have been working on should match that to the main duties of the NOC. Under the family sponsorship, if you are the sponsor, the person who is sponsoring, should be at least 18 years of age and a permanent resident or a Canadian citizen. Obviously, there are more rules associated with this, but I'm just running through the most basic ones, and then I'm going to be making specific videos for each of these categories. All right, so one of the main conditions to be met is you're at least 18 years of age if you want to be a sponsor, and you are a permanent resident or a Canadian citizen. You can sponsor if you are these two and you meet the rest of the conditions. You could sponsor your spouse, partner, or your biological child, adopted child, parents, grandparents, or your orphaned brother, sister, nephew, niece, or grandchild. The provincial nominee program for investors, each province have their own requirements of this is specific to investors. The goal generally is to create jobs, get more money into the economy, and to develop the economy using these small businesses. So each of the provinces have their own requirements of minimum net worth, minimum investment, whether an exploratory visit is required or not, the language requirements, the age requirements, and performance agreement with the province. So performance agreements, most of the no, provinces have a performance agreement in place, and generally the way it happens is you're given a work permit to establish your business, and you can apply for your permanent residence once the conditions of the performance agreement is met. So you sign on dotted lines before starting the business. Once you begin the business, once you have met all the conditions that are mentioned, you can go ahead and apply. The application can happen anywhere between 6 to 24 months from the time you begin the operations. Next is the self-employed program. Uh, you can apply under the self-employed category if you have taken part in cultural activities or athletics at a world-class level, or have been self-employed person in cultural activities or athletics. Suppose you're a coach. You've just been you've been in athletics in the past, and now you have become a coach, and you have been self-employed and you've been coaching people in particular, maybe track event or running or something. And in that case, you can apply under the self-employed program. Humanitarians and refugees can make an asylum claim by presenting yourself at the Canadian port of entry. Must have well founded fear of persecution in your country, and must not be inadmissible in Canada on certain grounds like criminality. And finally, the startup visa. When applying for startup visa, you need a commitment from a designated organization. And when receiving your permanent residence, the organization that you're working towards must have been incorporated within Canada. The operations must be taking place, and the applicant must be managing the business.